And welcome back to Talkin' Dynasty. This is the show where we go deep into game theory and strategy, just not who we like and who you should like as well. I am your host, Garret Price, here with my good friend, the best looking man I've ever seen, Jared Wackerly. How's it going?
Dude, I feel like you sound professional. Like you've come a long way in I don't know. When did you go full-time Dynasty Nerds?
In March.
Yeah, and you've just been pumping content. If you guys haven't seen Garrett's content lately on the YouTube channel, I mean, it's almost daily at this point. But I can just tell, like, you're in rhythm. You've been talking a lot. Yeah. You're like, you know, host Garret Price. It's like, wow, that sounded good.
I got the host voice down, baby.
But
dude. Even just a hour ago, I was doing the live show, and those are really... They're amazing shows, and I genuinely love to do them. But they are tricky because you're talking to nothing and to no one.
Yeah.
Like, you have the chat, but
right.
You're not talking with anyone. So, yeah, it can be a little bit challenging. So, you got to have your end game for that.
Well, you do a good job. So, I'm proud of you.
Appreciate it, homie. Jared, we have a very interesting topic today, and you probably clicked into the show seeing the topic already, so it's not going to be a huge surprise. But we're going to talk about why your fantasy teams suck, which sounds very negative, but it's true. All of us have teams that suck.
In a normal title of a article would be like common dynasty fantasy football pitfalls. Top 7 mistakes new dynasty managers make. Yeah.
Yep, that's perfect. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk about these pitfalls, these mistakes, these shortcomings of many dynasty teams. And look, we've all fallen into at least one or two of these at one point or another. Some of us might say oh my gosh, this is me, all of them. This is why I always lose.
You suck.
You are an idiot. But we're going to talk about what these are and how you can fix them. And look, I guarantee we're going to wrap this episode up, and we'll get in the comments or we'll get tweeted out dude, here's another big mistake that you guys didn't even cover.
I'm
sure that's going to come. Yes, please let us know, because I think these are fun things to talk about, because this, once again, really aligns well with what we want to do. We don't want to just tell you who to pick, who not to pick, who to draft, who not to draft, who to trade for. We want to teach you more how to think, and we're learning this as well. This isn't just, hey, we've got it all down, so let us give you all of the expert info. We're learning as we put these sheets together.
Dude, as I'm preparing for the show, I almost each bullet point, I feel like it could go so deep to where it could be its own show. There's so many
honestly
little paths I took while preparing this, and I'm I gotta get back to this is gonna be a whole show in itself. I gotta get back to just kind of hitting everything at a surface level. But some of these we've even done shows on already, the deeper dives and stuff. But
well, I mean, I even got a text from you at 8 something this morning where you're like, dude, I was up till 1 a.m. researching just this one bullet point.
Yeah.
And we both have done that at times where we get so focused in on one thing, and all of a sudden it's this huge rabbit trail, but
yes.
Usually leads to something useful somewhere.
Yeah, I'm really good at that. And I woke up this morning, I told my wife, I was I was up till 1 a.m. last night. She's like, what are you doing? I was I was doing fantasy football research, and I was just diving deep with ChatGPT. It was just running all this data analysis for me on positional scarcity, which we'll get into a little bit. But yeah, like I said, this could just be their own shows with how many different, I don't know, surface level ideas and strategies that we're going to touch on.
Well, I know you're crazy busy. Lots of stuff going on in your life right now. All good things.
Crazy.
But
we're moving.
But you're moving. I didn't know if you wanted to tell people that, so that's why I just said,
Yeah, we're moving. I'm not going to tell you my address or anything. So, but we're really excited. Yeah, we're upgrading. We have grown out. We're just outgrowing our current home, so we needed a new one.
Yeah, you got a lot more kids than I do, and
I have
you
one
need
more.
The extra elbow room. Hey, it feels like a lot. Who was it? Jim Gaffigan. He was talking. Have you ever heard him talk about this?
No, I've heard of Jim Gaffigan, but
he goes. He has I think he has 4 kids, and they're like, what's it like going from 3 kids to 4 kids? And he's like, just imagine that you're in a pool and you're drowning and then someone throws you a baby. It's like, that's what it's like.
That's true. That's a good one. You just keep throwing more babies in, and you're like, feel helpless sometimes, but it's great. It's great.
Try not to die.
It's great.
All right. Well, let's get into all of this. Oh, I said all of that to say maybe at some point you might even, if you find the time, might even do a one-off YouTube video talking about some of the research and the data that you found.
I was thinking I might even do an article.
Oh,
it's been a while.
When's the last time you wrote an article?
I don't know. Long time.
At least 2-3 years.
Yeah, but I miss it. I always liked, I feel more organized when I write an article rather than doing a video, because I feel like when I do a video, I just kind of forget stuff that I want to dive into. But an article you can just take your time with. We'll see. Watch, I'm not going to put an article out. We'll see. Just pay attention. I might tweet it out.
This is like a Rich Dotson promise. It might come, it might not. Someday, we don't know.
I'm moving right now. I'll use that as an excuse.
There we go. All right, let's get into the actual things that we want to talk about. So, why your dynasty team sucks. So, like we said, these are the common mistakes. These are the things that people do. Sometimes some of these things are intentional and they're just wrong. Some of these are just things they've overlooked. Some of these things they didn't even realize they should be doing. But these are all mistakes that plague dynasty leagues and dynasty managers specifically. And you could apply a lot of these to fantasy in general, but we're specifically focusing obviously on dynasty, as the show's name is Talking Dynasty. So, Jared, give us our first bullet point, our first topic of what we want to talk about as to why your team sucks.
Well, as I was kind of putting this sheet together, we were going back and forth. I thought we should start at the very beginning. So, like, when you go to join a league, a lot of people just won't dive deep into the league settings, and they don't understand the league settings or take the time to figure out or think about how the league settings will affect, market values and trading and how the actual startup draft is actually going to go. So, rule number 1, understand your league settings. Understand how many teams are in your league. Understand if it's super flex, tight end premium. Understand how many starters you can start. Is it 3 wide receivers? Is it 2 wide receivers? All of those things matter. So, sounds simple, but it can be as deep as you make it. Not understanding your league settings is why your dynasty team sucks.
Yeah, so great example. My very first year ever playing Dynasty. I played a lot of fantasy, and there were guys that were a little bit newer to this. And guys were walking in with redraft rankings in a Dynasty draft. Now, this was like 11 years ago, so this was still a very new concept. But one of the big things in the settings, and they talked about it, was even though it was a 1-quarterback league, it was a 0.5 point per completion and no negative scoring for incompletions. And so I was like, oh, wow, that drastically changes the value of the quarterback in this league. And so I had the 4th pick. And the first 3 picks go. This was in 2013. First 3 picks go Trent Richardson, Doug Martin, Alfred Morris. Those were the first 3 picks.
Some names.
Ugh. Woof.
Yeah.
Woof. And a guy that was like, hey, I think this is going to drastically boost good, accurate quarterbacks, especially if I can find a young one. I took Aaron Rodgers. Ended up panning out pretty dang well. Now, don't get me wrong. I've made some terrible trades in that league too. I've made some big mistakes. But that was one of those times early on where that was a huge difference in making my team successful for those first few seasons and well beyond. I mean, he's still playing versus we haven't mentioned the name Alfred Morris in 6 years, 7 years. Like, and even when we did, he had 1 RB1 season. Trent Richardson had 1 RB1 season, and Doug Martin had 2. And all of those guys, their RB1 season was their rookie year. So Of
Yeah.
those 3 guys, they combined for one more RB1 season for the rest of their careers.
Talk about putting a stick of dynamite on your team like right at the beginning of the league starting.
Right off the rip. So understanding your league settings, understanding, hey, there's a boost here. And one of the ones that I'm seeing a lot more common is there's points per carry. You're seeing more for that. That gives a little bit more to running backs. You're seeing tight end premiums moving from 1.5 points to 2 points. Some I've even seen a league where they're doing 2.5. So that's a huge additional value to the tight end position. But you got to do the math on this. Is it going to be a huge value for all of them, or just the top tier guys? Does it just make the top tier guys even better? And so you have to kind of do all of your homework. The best way to do this, if you're starting a new league and you don't understand the league settings, or you're not quite sure, they're a little different, you're not quite sure how things are going to work, do your best to find a league with the same or very, very similar settings and see what the finishers were like last year, because that'll kind of give you a good indicator of like, oh, wow, in this league, quarterbacks, the top 17 guys were all quarterbacks. The quarterback scoring in this league clearly is a huge boost to that position. I got to make sure I get a top tier quarterback. Or, man, the pass catching running backs, there's a huge boost there. Or whatever it is, you can kind of see based on the finishes from the year before how well or where you need to be drafting these guys in your startup.
I'm just writing down that we should make a tool that allows people to see how players finished based off of like customizable stats.
Ooh.
We should do that.
Make it really easy.
Yeah. There are tools like the wins above replacement tool that Ray has on destinationdevy.com. Like when we had Scott Connor on the show, that kind of will give you a bird's eye view of like how, in terms of like wins above replacement, which kind of encaptures this whole concept, what positions you should be targeting and like where in terms of wins above replacement, like the QB1 through QB20 finished in terms of wins. So you can use tools like that too. Another thing, the roster settings, understanding positional scarcity. And this is kind of the topic that I was telling Garrett I dove deep into. And I'm going to put out something that dives a little deeper than what we're going to touch on here in this show. But the scarcity of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends greatly depends on, if it's super flex versus one QB. Because if it's one QB versus super flex, obviously there's a huge demand shift for quarterbacks in super flex leagues where you're going to be able to start 2. So I broke down from the 90th percentile all the way down to the 40th percentile, and those percentiles are based off of points per game in terms of PPR. So how many quarterbacks finished in the 90th percentile was 4.1 on average, and this is dating back to 2018 through 2023. And in that 90th percentile, they averaged 21 points per game, where if you looked at the 90th percentile for running backs, it was 18 points. Wide receivers, points per game was 16 points in the 90th percentile. Tight end was 13. And then I also pulled out like how many from that position finish in that percentile to kind of see, what those high-end players are and like how much they're scoring and how many you can expect there to be. So quarterback right away, obviously they score the most points. So in super flex leagues, when there's only 4 to 7 top guys, that creates that scarcity where you're going to want to target those top guys a little more than you typically would in a one quarterback league. Am I explaining this how you would follow it, Garrett? Do you have any questions that I could like answer on that?
Go ahead and keep going, but yeah, I have a couple questions just to help clarify things.
Clear it up.
This can be a tough thing to follow.
Yeah, I know. I'm like talking. I'm like, no one's going to follow me on this shit.
Yeah. Hey, we got really smart listeners. They got you, man.
Okay. So, I mean, at the end of the day, understanding positional scarcity should be a driving factor in like your startup draft decisions, like how you should trade. Should you capture, like, should you be a quarterback hoarder in Superflex leagues because they carry the most value? So it's just really understanding supply and demand at the end of the day.
Yeah, and for the listener's sake, and even for my sake a little bit too, because we were talking about this a little bit earlier, just kind of a glimpse into that. Does this go regardless of format? Like, for the most part, obviously there are certain things that could like adjust it and boost it slightly. Like, this guy gets a ton of carries, so if it's a points per carry league, that's going to change it slightly. But overall, there's some universal truths of like, there's only going to be 4 or 5 quarterbacks that are going to hit that top tier. There's only going to be 2 or 3 tight ends. Like, what are we looking at as those actual top tiers?
Yeah, so the wide receiver group, the wide receiver position tends to be the deepest position. So that could tell you, like, okay, maybe I can wait. So on average, wide receivers, there's 9.8 on average that finish in the 90th percentile on a year-to-year basis. And that is about 16.8 points per game. And then if you drop down to the 80th percentile and up for wide receivers, on average, there's 18 that finish within this range, and that range is 14.8 points per game and up. But then when you look over at quarterbacks, the 80th percentile, there's only 7 versus the wide receivers that have 18, and those 7 are scoring around 19 points per game. So that emphasizes even more the importance of getting a top tier quarterback on your team in Superflex, and saying, like, even though those wide receivers last for a long time and getting good young receivers is awesome, on a year-to-year basis, they're somewhat overrated getting, like, most of the top 2 tiers worth of guys compared to tiers 3 and 4. Correct. Like, you want to have 2. If you have 2 elite quarterbacks on your team, I'm talking like top 7 guys, top 8 guys,
like Mahomes and Allen
in a Superflex league, and that gives you such an advantage in your league. So it's understanding like what high-end position or what high-end players to target in what position. Like running back is another one where there is like a large drop-off from those top-tier guys. So like at the running back position on average, there's about 5 that finish in the 90th percentile, and they're scoring around 18.2 points per game. And then the 80th percentile, there's still only 12.8. So it's really like those RB1s. Like, you want to have a couple of those RB1s to really give yourself a chance to win the championship. And then you might be able to wait a little bit on receiver, or maybe even tier down from those top receivers.
And when you're saying there's 12, so you're saying there's 9 that hit that threshold in tier 1, but we're only adding like 3 more to that group in tier 2.
So you mean for receivers?
Or sorry, what was it for running back? What was it for
running back? It was 5 in the 90th percentile.
5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the 80th percentile drops down to 12.8 versus wide receivers there's 9.8 in the 90th percentile. There's 4 more players on average that hit that range, but they're still scoring less than those top tier running backs. So more emphasis on top tier running backs and getting those to really compete and give yourself an advantage in your leagues. Not to say you shouldn't draft the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, because you got to factor in shelf life too. Like running backs, there's a much lower shelf life, and receivers, there's just a lot of different factors you need to weigh into your decision making. But positional scarcity is an important one for sure.
Awesome. I'm glad you did that. I think that's huge for people understanding their leagues, understanding what positions actually have value, what top tier guys am I going after, and which ones can I tier down and still get good production out of those players. So I think that is a really, really important thing for people to know. Jared, you have a league schedule on here, and I'm glad you put that on here because of all of the things that I do well, this is one of the ones that I am not good about. Like, I am not good at remembering which league has which waiver date for this and trade deadline for that. Like, why is that important?
Yeah, it can be difficult, especially like you and I were in a lot of leagues, so every league's kind of different. But it's important. I mean, I think right away one of the main dates you want to know is your trade deadline, your league's trade deadline, because if you don't know the trade deadline and it passes and you're, oh shoot, I needed to make a couple moves before like a playoff run or something, yeah, you're screwed. And then it's important also to be kind of hitting those guys up that maybe you're in a rebuild and you see some guys that are looking like they're going to squeak into the playoffs that you think should probably make a couple moves, and you have a couple veterans you might want to offload. Like at that time, like that has the most action because people need to get some deals done. And another one is after your rookie drafts, that first waiver run. You know, maybe you only have 3 rounds in your rookie draft, and there's definitely some guys on waivers that you want to take a shot at. So that's a big one.
No, I think that's a great one. Let's get into our next point here. You're a bad trader. And look, some people are terrible traders. Like, some of the questions that I get through, like, should I trade this guy for this guy? And I'm like, why would you even ask me that? Like, why? What are you thinking? So some people just don't understand values. You're a bad trader. And there's a few different reasons you're a bad trader. It's not just understanding values. There's a few of them. And the first one that you put the bullet point for, I think is hilarious. And I love it.
I know. You're that's a jerk. Like, this is you love saying jerk. Like you call me a jerk all the time.
It's my, I don't swear. I don't swear very often. So calling somebody a jerk is like, if I call you a jerk, you've had it, man.
It's like basically calling someone an asshole.
Basically, that's what it is for me. Somebody put the other day, they were talking about like the different the anger level of Midwesterners, and like one of the worst ones was like, listen here, buddy. Like, you know they're pissed. If you get listen here, buddy, you know they're real upset. Yeah. But anyway, you're a jerk. You have not done a good job of building solid relationships with people in your league. And I know this is a fantasy football show. I am still to this day in a fantasy baseball league. I'm only in one league, but it's a fun league. I enjoy it. It's with guys that I met when I lived in Oklahoma. It's my way of kind of still connecting with them. There was one guy in my league that he would have to offer me a king's ransom for me to even consider doing a deal with him because of how many times I've tried to deal with him and he's been a pain in the butt. Like, seriously, like the worst one was 2 years ago. He texted me and said, hey, I'm looking at doing a deal, blah, 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 blah. We go back and forth texting a couple times. He's like, okay, I'd be willing to do X. And I'm like, okay, I think that's a fair deal. I'm willing to do that. Sends me a trade offer different than what he just told me.
Asking for just a little bit more. Probably.
You literally just told me, yes, 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes ago, you told me that you were offering this, and then you offer me something different. Like, what the heck? Like,
don't be that guy.
I was pissed. I was pissed.
A don't be that guy segment.
That's one of those don't be that guy for sure. If you tell somebody one thing and offer them something different, or then like immediately be like, never mind, I want more. You know, like that kind of stuff. It's like, dude, why did I just waste the past 2 hours talking with you? We come to an agreement, and then you decide, just kidding. Like, that's the worst.
Yeah, build relationships with your league mates, especially in leagues where you don't really have relationships with people yet. You know, maybe there's ones you've met people online in Discord, in the Dynasty Nerds Discord. Like, talk in that inbox, you know, have discussions. It's good to open up and reach out to people because that's more likely that you're going to get deals done with these people. If you're one of those people that don't respond to trades, you know, you're kind of brash about, you know, an offer that you get, you're a jerk. And don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Build relationships.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great one. You mentioned inactive trader as well. Just like, dude, I've messaged you. I've sent you 3 trade offers in a row.
Yeah.
You haven't even declined them. Like, you decline them, fine, whatever. I love getting counters back. That's great. But like, I can live with it if you at least decline it. But it's just sitting there it's been there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Why is there an offer just sitting there for 3 weeks?
Do you typically like ping them in the chat too if you send them a trade? Yeah, I think that's helpful. Some people, I don't know. I feel like Sleeper sometimes the notification system sometimes I won't get the notification that I
It's
get.
a little buggy.
I get it. Yeah. Or there's just so many, and I'm just like, I miss it when I'm scrolling through 20 drops after a rookie draft or something. But
Right.
respond to trades and don't be inactive. Wake up.
Yeah, and people love, and you know this because you feel this way. I love getting trade offers in my inbox. It's tough. It's just like in a relationship. Like, if you're the one always making the effort, like, that gets tiresome after a while. But if somebody's willing to put forth the effort to put out the first offer and send you one, like, oh, man, I want to deal with this guy now. I want to talk to this guy because he was willing to take the time to construct a trade, even though it might not be the best trade offer. He at least took the time to construct, or she took the time to construct an offer and send it my way. Like, that makes me more apt to want to work with them in the future as well and do things. And a little side one is I love at times, especially early on if I don't have a great relationship with a lot of these people, I am okay doing a very small trade where we're talking like third round level type
Fifth
of trade.
for a fifth.
Yeah.
Just to send a notification.
Just to send them a note. But I'm even okay to lose those. Like on the surface where it's like, yeah, I probably lost that trade, just to build up some of that goodwill so they're willing to deal with me again in the future.
Do you have guys in your leagues that'll send a fifth for a fifth just to notify everyone else that a trade went through, and you open it up to see what it is? Oh, you assholes.
Dude, I have people all the time want to be like, I'll trade you $2 of fab for like just stuff like that. I'm like, oh,
or like
gosh.
$1. Yeah. I've seen those too.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you're a bad trader, or you think you're a bad trader, use a trade calculator. Like
there's nothing wrong with it.
No, we have a sleeper. They call them minis. We have an app basically inside of Sleeper's app. It's the Dynasty Nerds mini app. And we have a trade calculator in there. And we even have an inbox. So if you have trades that are in your inboxes across all your leagues, it'll show up in one place in the Dynasty Nerds mini. And you can launch that right into our trade calculator and just kind of give yourself an overview. Like, is this trade really far off? Am I close? Are there any pieces I could add here? And those values are basically based off our rankings and ADP and stuff, and we're trying to capture current market value for you guys. But the trade calculator is not the end all be all. Like, don't be the guy that's sending screenshots to prove that your trade's good to the person you're trying to trade with. Don't be that guy. It's super annoying. But use it as a guardrail. I mean, they're nice to kind of see, like, are you in the realm here? And it could be a good help for people that consider themselves new to Dynasty Fantasy Football.
No, I think that's fantastic. There is this, like, for people that have been playing a while, there's a stigma around Dynasty calculators and trade calculators, and I get it. Like, I don't want you to just build the trade based off the exact values of the calculator, but there's a reason that they're out there. They help give good guidelines for what's a reasonable trade, what's not a reasonable trade. Just because it says it's a win for me doesn't mean I have to accept. And just because it's a lose, like, I don't have to base my final decision on it. But especially if you're a new player, use them. Because there's nothing worse than getting trade offers where, I shouldn't say there's nothing worse, but it's very frustrating to get the excitement around seeing a trade in your inbox and you're like, not in a million years would I even remotely consider doing this deal. Like, look,
it's one of those you screenshot and send to like another group checks. Like, look what Danny sent me.
Heck? Yeah, like, okay, yes, I'll give you Breece Hall and you give me back a second. That sounds real fair. Like, come on, guys.
They're like, this guy sent me one last week.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. So,
there's always one of those guys in your league, though.
Dude, always one. Like, I'm fine with, like, if you want to lowball a little bit to, like, build up to the red offer, cool. Like, I'm fine with that. But at least stay in the ballpark. Like, at least be in the upper deck. Like, you don't have to be at home plate with me, but at least be in the, like, stay in the stadium, please. Come on.
Yeah. And I was just going to add real quick, like, if you might not agree with the values of the calculator, but you can actually upload your own rank set into the Dynasty Nerds app, and everything, including the calculator, will be based off of your ranks. So it's up to you. But and one last thing, the reason why calculators aren't the end all be all is because there's so much missed context that you can't really like build into an app like that or a value like that. Correct. There's just like who's strong and weak at what position, and how little nuances to scoring settings in your league and things like that, like we talked about earlier. Like that's why it's just not fully captured in a calculator, so you got to be aware of that stuff too.
100%. All right, let's move on to our next one. You don't really know where you stand in your league. That's why your team sucks. You just don't realize where you're at.
You suck.
Jared, you suck. That's why you suck. So I do these podcasts on the side where I go into people's leagues and I evaluate teams and talk about their leagues, and it's a fun time. But one of the things that it allows me to do is just see how so many different leagues conduct themselves. So it's kind of a fun study that I get to do and get a sneak peek into all these leagues. In almost every league, there's a few exceptions, but in almost every league, there is a team or two that they just don't understand if they're a rebuilder, if they're in the middle of the pack, if they're a contender. Like, they truly just don't get it. And the one that I see the most is teams that think they're contenders and are clearly not. That's the most common one that I see.
Those are the best guys to trade with or target for trades.
Yes, and get their draft picks because, dude, you'll see it. You have a starting quarterback. You don't even have a second one to put in your super flex spot. Your starting running backs are James Conner and Kyron Williams, which are fine, but like nothing exciting. You don't have a tight end beyond Dawson Knox right now, and you're just hoping that Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown wins you a ship by themselves. Like, that's what you're hoping. Yeah. And, like, granted, those are two good players. That's awesome. But you can't win a ship with two players. You have one quarterback. You can't fill out an entire roster with starting guys. Like, dude, and guess what? You're missing your 25 and 26 first-round pick. Like, why? Why did you trade those picks? Why did you do that? Because now you have to try to contend for the next 2 years, and you can't do it.
And that's the best part about playing Dynasty, dude. It's year round, and it's long-term planning. It's, maybe if you know where your team is, you can it's just another foundational piece to planning out your trading. Or, maybe you're going to a startup and you know that you're going to punt the first couple years because in years 3, 4, 5 you want to dominate. But understanding if you're in a rebuild or you're a contender and you should go for it, it's gonna drive your trading decisions, especially when it comes to like selling off older guys to people that are on the brink of competing, or like we just said, targeting guys that think they're gonna be competing, but really their team's a dud. So it's just a huge part of playing Dynasty. And Garrett, we have the perfect app where people can go and figure this out.
Man, you're a company man. You're always good at bringing it back. I need to be more like you. But yeah, we do. We have an app that can kind of show you like quickly where you stand. Like, are you one of the top 2 or 3 Dynasty teams? Where are you at in contender mode? That's even more telling at times. Like, do you actually have a shot to win the ship this year? If you're not one of the top 2 or 3 teams in your league, you probably don't. You probably don't have a chance. And you can even see like the bar graph is really helpful because sometimes you might be the number 2 team in your league, but you're not even close to the number 1 team. And you have to take that into consideration.
We actually just updated the website. The website's finally, it took us a while to get what is showed on the app and what shows on the website, and we just launched the GM 2.0 on dynastynerds.com. They're still working out a couple bugs, but now it's fully on the desktop as well. And I'm not trying to be like too salesy here, like telling you guys like,
no,
you
you're
gotta
good.
go check out our tools, but like this is why we built these things, because we love playing Dynasty, and these are the kind of things you need to know. I use the GM all the time, dude. So
all the time.
Just trying to give you guys tools like where you can find them, and how tools that are out there that can help guide you in these reasons that you suck.
Yep, reasons that you suck. Any more on not understanding where you stand in your league, Jared, or are we good on this one, you think?
I think we're good. I think people got the gist.
Okay. All right. Next one. We've got a few more here. You don't know, or sorry, understanding player value trends. You don't understand player value trends, therefore your team sucks. So this is one I feel like is very common for your hardcore dynasty players that play in, 8 to 10 plus leagues, is you get obsessed with youth. Jared, how many times have you seen that?
All the time. I do it all the time. Like, I can't help it. It's like
Yep.
the reason I started playing Dynasty is because I always loved following the draft and like scouting guys, and like I always just loved trying to figure out who that next guy is gonna be, and you really, really start overvaluing these young guys that are more likely to not hit than hit, and sometimes that can blind you to taking proven veterans that have proven that they're good. They may be 26 or 27, but they're still going to score you fantasy points, and those young guys have much larger risk to bust. So don't fall in love with the youth.
Yeah, and look, it's awesome to say, dude, in 2 or 3 years, my team's going to be sick. Look at all these picks. Look at all these young guns. Dude, I've done it. I have done it more times than I want to admit, where I'm like, dude, I just need 2 more years. 2 more years. Like, look, if you're rebuilding, ideally, your rebuild should take you 2 years. If it's taking you longer than 2 years, you probably messed up somewhere. You probably did something wrong, or your team was just that decimated.
You took Clyde Edwards-Helaire instead of Jonathan Taylor.
Sure.
Stuff like that. It happens.
You took Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson, which I did.
That can happen. That's one of the risks of doing those startup punts. I'm going to punt for a couple of years, and but a part of that is accumulating all these picks to use as trade bait. Like you start dealing and filling holes for those misses. But yeah, everyone, we all fall in love with the youth, and you can't do that.
Yep, it gets tricky.
There's a lot of different player value trends that we can talk about. I think it kind of goes with the youth obsession. It's like in the offseason, people are all about these young guys. So there's seasonality and value swings with like veterans versus youth. So offseason, like I said, veteran values, they tend to go down a bit. And this could be a good time. And if you understand this could be a good time to start sending some trades out for some veterans that are likely to produce this year. A lot of projections are starting to come out for the season. A lot, like the betting lines just all came out recently. So pay attention to all of this stuff. Like what offenses are going to be scoring the most points in terms of like the projections and stuff this year, and target those veterans that are a part of those teams that could produce for you while we're in the off season, because their value tends to be the lowest. And then it kind of flips a little bit once we get into the season, right, Garrett? Like we start seeing some of the young guys that we had high hopes for aren't producing, and you need to fill some holes on your team, and the veterans really start ticking up a bit.
Oh, 100%. The price that you're going to trade for Joe Mixon in your rookie draft versus week 8 of the season are drastically different. Same player, but the price is going to be he is going to be so cheap. If you're trading, you've got the 203 and you trade for Joe Mixon, people are like, oh my goodness, you idiot. Do you understand all of these rookies that you could have just had? Like, oh my goodness. If you come to me with Joe Mixon in week 8, you say, I'll give you a early to mid second. I'm going to be like, bro, get out of here with that. I'm winning a ship. Like, get out of here with that weak stuff. Like, but that's exactly how it is. Like the value, it could be the same player, but the way people value that player during their rookie drafts when, dude, we just got done with the combine. We just got done with the draft. Oh, he's for sure going to be getting touches right away. He's part of that mix in that backfield. Like, he's probably not. I love Rasheen Ali. He's probably not part of the mix, like right away. He's probably not. Do I want him to be? Do I think he should be? Yeah, but he's probably not. Like things like that. We get our own. I have so many Rasheen Ali shares. I love him. But we get these narratives in our head, and we convince ourselves that, like, dude, Jalen Wright. I'm telling you, Jalen Wright. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot of Jalen Wright too. I think he's going to be a great Raheem Mostert replacement. Is he going to probably play much this year? Probably not. It took some injuries to even get Achane on the field last year. Like, it's tough to project these things. We fall in love with youth, but you got to know the times of year and when these guys are valuable, when they're not. And Jared, you have age cliffs on here too, which is I think another one that if you've been playing Dynasty a while, you understand that a little bit more than if you're newer to the game.
Yeah, that's just another like value trend that you should be aware of that can help drive the decision-making process for you when you're drafting and trading. So like wide receivers, they have a much longer shelf life than running backs. Wide receivers start to see their peak age be about like 28. They start really dipping down. They'll produce like 29 or in their 30s. If they're like those elite top tier guys, those are the guys that usually continue to produce a bit. But as terms of like value goes, those guys aren't gaining any more value as the years go on. They might be producing, but you got to play the value game too. And their values just, they don't go back up after they turn like 28. And then running backs, it tends to be like age 26. I don't have the quarterback, and I thought I had the quarterback data and the tight end data here, but I just have running backs and wide receivers. Quarterbacks have a really long shelf life too, and those elite tight ends.
Seems to be getting longer too.
Yeah. Definitely. I feel like as they continue to get more and more protected. But
yeah, 37, 38 used to be like a death sentence. We're now like, I got 3 more years.
Yeah, exactly. But no, just understanding these things is it's super important. You need to know this stuff. It gives you an advantage over your league mates and helps you to not suck.
All right. Reason number 5, I think, roughly 5, that you suck and your fantasy team sucks is you're bad at drafting. You are not good at it. Whether it comes to rookie drafts, your startup drafts, whatever it is, you miss often. And that is a really, really big reason that teams just fail. They don't draft well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know guys that will just pretty much draft from ADP because maybe they weren't really tapped in the offseason, or they didn't prepare for their draft, and oh shoot, their rookie draft's starting. They're doing some like last minute YouTube search, or they get like the most generic rankings they can find online. Like, no, do your research. Like, dive in. Dynasty Nerds, Garrett and I, we put out our film grade every year. It's called the Nerd Score. Like, take that into account. Watch the game tape. We have a whole film library on Dynasty Nerds. You can go watch these guys like 5 minutes a time. Just analyze stats if you're an analytics type guy. Follow guys that are proven to be really good at this. So it's just like up your scouting game and don't just follow ADP and generic lists.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that too, sometimes we can tend to get a little overconfident, where we think we know more than everybody else knows. And look, some people are really good at scouting, and they genuinely do know a little bit more than the average bear does. But if you're newer to this, like say this is your first time watching tape and you're new to it, that's awesome. Good for you for like taking the next step, trying to up your game.
Good job, buddy.
Like, good, yay, neato gang, super duper. But like, don't trust your eyes just yet. Like, this is your first time doing this. Anytime it's your first time doing something, you can't expect to be great at it right off the rip. So if you are watching tape and you see other people that you trust that are saying drastically different things about that player than you are, don't assume you know more than everybody else. Like, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, I'm going to try to get better, but I need to understand these people, these draft scouts, these dynasty guys, these guys that tend to have really high hit rates. What are they seeing? What are they saying? And how can I incorporate what they're saying and seeing into my notes, into my process, into what I'm doing? Because just watching a few highlight tapes, just watching a random game only can get you so far. And sometimes it can be even more of a trap than it can actually be helpful. So don't try to outsmart everybody.
Yeah, or give yourself more swings at the plate too. Try to stockpile picks if you can, and that's taking advantage of those value changes we talked about earlier. Like, give yourselves more swings at the plate in the third and the second rounds. Just try not to be bad at drafting, or else you'll suck.
Yeah. If you're bad at drafting, it's gonna make it tough, because you better be a fantastic trader then, because otherwise your team's gonna be pretty dang bad. That's really the only way you get players is from trading or from drafting. So you better be good at least one of them. Last thing I do want to say about drafting and reasons people aren't so good at it is there's little things that we don't always understand, but teaching yourself how to understand these things, whether that be like a big one for me is like, I'm really big on, and I didn't know this even though I played high school football, I played college football. When I first started doing Dynasty, like if you would have asked me point blank, explain the difference between a zone scheme, a gap scheme, a man scheme, a duo scheme, like I don't think I could have. I don't think I could have explained the differences, and I don't think I could have recognized them on tape. You don't have to be an expert at them, but at least kind of know what you're looking like. Oh, okay, I can see based on the entire offensive line dropping a foot and pulling at the same time that this is an outside zone scheme that they're running for the most part. Okay, I understand that a little bit more. And know what they're supposed to be doing in that. When you understand some of those things, now it's much easier to watch tape as opposed to just, well, he's fast and they didn't tackle him, so he's good. You know, like, yes, but there's a little bit more context to that. You know, when you're watching receivers, understanding like, okay, he's going against a man defense versus a zone defense. He's going up against or he's utilizing these types of routes, but he kind of sucks at these types of routes. Like, these little things can take you a long way in just kind of understanding a little bit more and a little bit more about the game that we love. And when you understand these things, you have a much better chance of hitting. Now, we're talking about being bad at drafting from the
rookie draft,
from the film watcher perspective. But there's going to be plenty of you out there that are like, I couldn't watch film to save my life. Like, I enjoy watching football on Sundays.
Like,
I
got a life, and I feel like probably 70% of people are listening to this right now. Like, bro, I ain't got time to freaking watch 10 games of this guy. Like, I'm relying on you guys.
Analytics.
Or follow guys like us. You know, we've been putting the nerd score out for a while. We've done pretty well. Yeah, or use analytics, like Garret said. Find the right analysts that seem to be doing well for you, and if you don't have the time to dig in, like we were talking about, take their word and see how you do.
Absolutely. All right,
but
Jared, I love the title you gave to this one. Why don't you lead this one off for us?
Next point: if you fall asleep in the off season, your dynasty team probably sucks. Like,
probably sucks.
So many of my home leagues, like I know my buddies, like they're just not checking anything. It's the off season. But in Dynasty there is no off season, dude. You should always be checked in with coaching changes, how that might impact the offensive scheme. You know, that could make slot wide receivers better in this scheme, and maybe they run a lot of motion. And how is that coordinator who just got promoted to head coach going to change things at that team? Trades, free agency, all these things impact other players and impact themselves and change player values. So you should be checked in. You should be checked into the trade block when someone throws someone up on the trade block. Don't check out in the offseason. There is no offseason.
No, I absolutely love this, and it's true. And even the best of us at times can get a little bit lazy. You know, we can get a little bit lazy on.
That's what it is.
Checking the. It's lazy.
Or you just don't care. You won't be listening. If you're listening to this, you care.
You care, but you get lazy, man, and you're like, dude, I don't want to offer a trade. I don't want to offer a trade right now, even though this is a great time to trade for this player. Like, dude, I can't right now. You know,
I go through the same thing. Like, I'll have 3 trades sitting in my inbox, and I'll get to them. I know I will. Like, I'll even let the person know I saw it, but I need to digest it, and I need a week sometimes in the off season.
Yeah.
And that's not really a good thing. You should try to react pretty quickly to like new trades and stuff. It's just always be tapped in if you want to give yourself the best chance to win in your league. Like, you got to stay active.
Absolutely. And the good news is, like Jared said, if you're listening to this is probably the one that applies to you the least, because in the middle of June, you're listening to an hour-plus long podcast on dynasty strategy. You're not checked out. Like, you're plugged in. So the good news is, even though this is, I think, a huge bullet point, most of our listeners this is not going to apply to, because you're doing the work right now.
Yep. Totally agree.
All right. Last but not least, this is 0.7, 0.8, something like that.
I don't know.
Last one.
Top 7, 8 tips.
Top 7. Overreacting to one season. And look, there's a lot of ways that we can overreact. We can overreact to, man, that he had an RB 1 year. He's going to do it again. Well, they just signed another running back and they drafted one too. So he's probably not. He's probably not going to do that again. Or, oh, dude, I had the worst luck. I'm never drafting Christian McCaffrey again because he got injured 2 years in a row and he's just a bum. Like, and Saquon Barkley too. He got injured 2 years in a row. There's no chance he's going to be good ever again. I'm out. If your team has Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey right now, you're pretty excited. You're pretty excited about your running back room. Things are looking pretty good. But we can overreact to good things and bad things over just a short period of time.
Yeah. Be patient in your approach. Do the proper research. Like, was the player's talent the issue, or maybe it was just the situation, like Arthur Smith in Atlanta. Like, those guys, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, are a perfect example of this. Stay patient. Don't overreact to 1 or 2 bad seasons when you know that talent is there on a player. Bet on talent, and then capitalize on situation when the situation is right.
Yeah, and that's something that is so... I think this is one of the biggest things that does get trades done, is teams that are just tired. They're just tired of this individual player for whatever reason, whether it be injuries, inconsistent play. Those are probably the 2 biggest. He's just a jerk. You don't like him.
Get him out.
I mean, that's kind of the case in like Tyreek Hill and Deshaun Watson and guys like that. So yeah, I guess that can be the case at times.
Yeah.
But those players present opportunity, and those are players that you want to be targeting. Everyone has an owner in their league that tends to overreact a little bit to things, whether it's a new signing, whether it's a trade, whether it's a coaching change, whether it's a whatever. They are the person that has the more knee-jerk reaction to things. And those guys usually present opportunities to make some really good trades with. Because if you can have a more patient approach, yes, is it going to work out 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Like, it's still a game that is very tough to predict, very flawed in its exact science, but it's a beautiful, beautiful game. And that's what makes it fun, is the unpredictability of it. But there are trends that we can say, I might be wrong 30% of the time, but 70% of the time it works out this way. So I'm going to take the odds that it continues to work out this type of way.
I like it. 100% right. Let's recap this, Garrett. Let's go back through the list, just like the bullet points. So, number 1, understand your league settings. Number 2, don't be a bad trader. Number 3, know where you stand in your league. Have a plan. Are you a rebuild? Are you a contender? Then the next one, understanding player value trends, understanding the seasonality, positional age cliffs, understanding the youth obsession and recognize that. Next one, you are bad at drafting. Don't be bad at drafting.
Don't be bad.
What's the number? I don't even know what number I'm on now.
I think that's 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I on 6? Yeah. Don't fall asleep in the off season. Stay active. Pay attention to what's going on. Number 7. I almost forgot again. It is a list of 7. The top 7.
It is. It works perfect.
Top 7 pitfalls and dynasty managers make.
That's gonna be the YouTube thumbnail.
Don't overreact to one season. Do your research. Figure out the why players aren't producing, and don't overreact.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this show. This was something that we talked about doing, and we were even like, when do we want to do this? And we kind of bumped this one up the order a little bit just because we were excited to do this one. But yeah. I am really excited about the next episode that we're going to do. And if you're part of the Nerd Herd, maybe you even got in the league with me. I wanted to try a strategy out because I wanted to see how it worked. And I'm not trying to say that I'm the author or the originator of this draft strategy. I'm sure that there's other people that either semi-intentionally or unintentionally fell into this draft strategy, but it's not one that we commonly talk about. It's not one that has a name that we classify.
You didn't come up with a name yet? You didn't come up with a fancy name for it yet?
I have a name, but I'm not telling people what it is yet. They got to wait.
We'll have to wait until the next show.
That's right. We got to tease it, baby. A little tease.
Ooh.
So we'll be talking about that in the next few weeks, but that wraps this show up. Jared, anything else that we want to tell people before we get out of here?
Yeah, so I'm working on putting together that Campus to Canton League we talked about on our last episode.
Oh, yes.
I have been a little busy. I was away at a wedding, and then we just figured out we're moving. So just going through all of that. But I pretty much have the league set up, and we will start drawing names soon and sending out invites and everything and getting the startup draft going. So if you're waiting for that or looking for that, we haven't picked anybody yet. So just stay tuned, and we'll get to that shortly. But other than that, man, great show. Fun doing this again, and looking forward to that next one.
Absolutely, dude. Always love getting to hang out with you and getting to talk Dynasty Fantasy Football. So I appreciate all you guys listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe, you like the YouTube channel. If you're just listening, make sure to leave a comment and a review on the podcast. All these things, super helpful. We really appreciate all of you guys doing that. So for myself, for Jared Wackerly, we'll see you next time.